I'm pretty sure a lot of people remember Viewtiful Joe from the 2000s. It's one of Capcom's older IP. It's not as old as people think, even though it came out like 20 years ago. It's pretty old, but it's something that it's something that a lot of people remember, but at the same time, casual gamers aren't really too familiar with because nothing has really been done with the series since like 2005, and I think there's only been like four games that has been released since its inception. Because I believe Beautiful Joe got started back in 2003, and there was a sequel I think that came out like the following year or something, and then we got two spin-off games in '05 for Nintendo DS and PSP. And honestly, the original Viewtiful Joe game was something that was really unique. It was very it was very different from anything else you would have played at the time. It's very different than anything else you would play nowadays, considering what's considered the norm in relation to gaming. And it was a game that had like 3D cell shaded graphics and 2D beat 'em up gameplay. And of course, by the time we got to like the early to mid 2000s, the beat 'em up genre had become less popular or whatever. But at the same time, you look at the concept, the graphics, the presentation, the idea, the story, all that stuff was pretty unique. And I'm pretty sure that this game probably would have stood out more if it came out like during like the mid to late teens, when I guess indie games started to become more popular than it would have been in the 2000s for the most part. And I feel like I don't think like Capcom even acknowledged like the 20-year anniversary of Beautiful Joe last year, because I didn't see a trend on Twitter or anything like that. But it's almost like Beautiful Joe's become a forgotten IP of Capcom for the most part, because Capcom realized that the franchise really didn't do well in terms of sales and didn't draw the type of revenue that they wanted it to back in the day, which is probably why they decided to put the series to bed. And it seems like for the past almost 20 years, like the franchise has been dead. Nothing's been done with it. There's been no attempts to revive the IP whatsoever. But seeing that this game is now a cult classic and people look back at the original Viewtiful Joe game with a different pair of eyes, I feel like it's something that can at least break a mil or even 2 mil in terms of sales if Capcom either decide to remake the original game or to just reboot the series altogether. And my guess is that the only reason why Capcom has not done that is because they have the mentality of, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. And they have more profitable, IPs right now that's doing ridiculous sales and making a ton of revenue for them. Got like Monster Hunter, you got Resident Evil, you got Street Fighter. Those are like the big three for Capcom, at least to my knowledge. And I don't think Viewtiful Joe or like reviving it or bringing it back is something that's on the top of their priority list, because like similar to like Darkstalkers is like a cult classic as well. A lot of people missed the series and it hasn't been relevant since the 90s, but it's something that people would love to see a brand new entry of. And I feel like if Capcom had revived Darkstalkers or Viewtiful Joe, it would be like more popular now than it was back in the day. And I think the reasons why, Capcom has not done that is because the landscape of gaming has changed a lot. We live in a day and age where action adventure and action RPG games are very popular. And the fighting genre is still like moderately popular in this day and age, because franchises like Street Fighter, Tekken, they've been around since the 90s, and the franchises have been growing and growing in terms of popularity because of the continuity of the stories and the characters added and all that stuff. It's like those games caught on with casuals back in the day. Games like Viewtiful Joe and Darkstalkers did not, and in those games do have like their niche audience for the most part. But I feel like if the modern era of gamers were reintroduced to Viewtiful Joe or introduced to Viewtiful Joe for the first time, it's something that would stand out because it's not a bland, boring copy of another game that um, publications and critics say you should play or whatever, because that's one of the issues with video games nowadays. You have a first person shooter or an action RPG, and there's really nothing like special or significant about it, and it's supposed to be a copy of something else, and it's just whatever. It's something that it gets hyped up, it comes out, no one cares about it, nobody really talks about it. Everybody's just going about their business. Beautiful Joe, I don't think really has um, as much name value as like some of Capcom's other IPs, but at the same time, I feel like it stands out enough to a point where a casual gamer would try it out to see what it's like, and to see how different it is from everything else they play and everything else that they say is cool or whatever. But yeah, Capcom, I feel like they probably could take a chance in rebooting Viewtiful Joe for the most part. I'm not exactly sure if they feel like it's worth it, because if they decided to put all that money, that time and energy in creating a new installment, then then it's something that can go one or two ways. It could end up being like somewhat of a pickup for the series in general. The series could probably reach its height in terms of popularity if we got a new entry or a reboot of the first two games or whatever, or it can flop and all that time and energy was wasted. But either way, I do feel like there needs to be more variety in the world of gaming, opposed to gaming developers trying to copy each other and all that stuff, because that's something that made gaming fun back in the day. And I feel like it's something that'll make gaming fun in this day and age. And Beautiful Joe, like when the original one came out on GameCube, it was actually one of the best third party games to appear on GameCube, because everything else that was bestsellers on Nintendo GameCube back in like the early to mid 2000s were Nintendo IPs. And the fact that Capcom was able to create a game that shined on a platform where Nintendo games normally shine is something that's impressive if you really look back on it. But but for the most part, I haven't really seen anything in relation to publications or anything in relation to social media about Viewful Joe being brought back anytime in the future. And it's been almost 20 years. So it seems like Capcom doesn't really have any plans on making that a reality, which is unfortunate, because I do feel that if Viewtiful Joe was announced, whether it be a new game or a reboot, it's something that would definitely trend and break Twitter, because it's something that people have been wanting to see for almost 2 decades now. And I do feel that with the amount of fan support that the game has, and the cult following that's generated like since the mid 2000s, I do feel that a Beautiful Joe reboot would be something that a lot of people would love to check out.